Imagine hearing about a bright, caring young person who was held captive and tortured for over a month. The details are so awful that they make your heart pound and your skin crawl. This person's name was Sam Nordquist, and his story shocked people all over the country. Sam was only 24 years old, and he was a transgender man from Minnesota. He left home for what seemed like a short trip, but he never came back. When police finally found out what happened, it was too late. Sam had suffered unthinkable abuse, and he lost his life in a way that no one should ever face. Sam Nordquist was born in Red Wing, Minnesota. Red Wing is a small city by the Mississippi River, known for its friendly people and peaceful neighborhoods. Growing up, Sam attended Red Wing High School, and most people who knew him said he was kind and helpful. He was the type of person who smiled at strangers and tried to make everyone feel welcome. Many of his classmates remember him as someone who would share his lunch if another student forgot theirs. If a friend felt sad, Sam would lend a supportive ear. If someone needed help with homework, Sam would stay after class to explain what he understood. Sam also worked at a group home in Little Canada, Minnesota. This home cared for people who had disabilities. Sam's job was important because it gave support to people who needed extra help in their daily lives. He showed patience and kindness, making sure his clients felt safe and respected. Coworkers spoke about how Sam's calm presence could ease tension during stressful moments. They also noticed how his empathy made him especially good at his job. When people needed understanding and warmth, Sam was there. Sam had a close family. He had a mother and 2 siblings, and they all meant the world to him. They described Sam as someone who would give you his last dollar if you needed it, and who never hesitated to comfort someone in pain. He also identified as biracial and as a transgender man. This means Sam was assigned female at birth, but later recognized he was male. Even though being transgender can come with challenges, Sam remained hopeful and upbeat. He wanted to see the best in people and hoped the world would see him for who he was, a caring, gentle soul. In September 2024, Sam decided to travel from Minnesota to New York. He had been talking online with someone he called his girlfriend, and he wanted to visit her in person. Sam told his family that he planned to leave on September 28th and come back in about 2 weeks. It did not seem like a risky plan. People meet online all the time, and many friendships or relationships start that way. Sam's mother and siblings felt a little worried because he had never met this person face-to-face before, but Sam insisted it would be fine. For a while, Sam stayed in touch with his family. He would send messages saying hello and letting them know he was okay. But as time went on, his messages began sounding strange. His mother later said that Sam did not sound like himself in the final text he sent. He seemed worried or anxious about something, but he did not give clear details. Then, after January 1st, 2025, Sam stopped contacting his family altogether. No calls, no texts, no social media. This silence worried everyone who knew Sam. It was not like him to just vanish. His family tried to reach him, but days turned into weeks without any response. They became certain that something was wrong. They begged the police in New York and Minnesota for wellness checks to see if Sam was all right. According to Sam's mother, these requests were mostly ignored or did not get the urgent attention they deserved. She said she called many times, asking the local authorities to check on Sam, but nothing happened. Meanwhile, an email later showed that Sam had gone to the Ontario County Social Services office in December to talk about needing an escape plan. This meant Sam was scared or felt trapped somehow. He wanted help leaving a bad situation. Sadly, it appears that Sam never got that help, because by early February 2025, everything took a tragic turn. On February 9th, 2025, the New York State Police finally took action on a missing persons report filed by Sam's family in Canandaigua, New York. They went to Patty's Lodge Motel in a place called Hopewell, located in Ontario County. The reason they went there was because they believed Sam had been staying at this motel with at least one other person. When they arrived, they made a horrifying discovery. The motel room showed signs that Sam had been tortured for a long time. The police found items that suggested extreme physical abuse and possible sexual assault. They also took statements from people who hinted that Sam had been beaten, tied up, and hurt in horrible ways from early December 2024 until February 2025. These findings were so disturbing that some officers said It was one of the worst cases they had ever investigated. Sam had been forced to live in constant fear and pain. Reports later stated that sticks, dog toys, ropes, belts, a broomstick, and even a table leg had been used to hurt him. This was not a single burst of violence. It was repeated abuse that lasted several weeks. Each day, Sam's suffering grew worse, and no one intervened to save him. The investigators kept searching for Sam, hoping to find him alive, but they soon uncovered a tragic ending. On February 13, 2025, authorities found human remains believed to be Sam's in a Yates County field, which lies about 50 miles southeast of Rochester, New York. Someone had moved the body, likely trying to hide what they had done. 2 days later, the Monroe County Medical Examiner's office confirmed that the remains were indeed Sam's. He had died from injuries caused by sharp force and extreme violence. The official ruling was homicide. Sam had been murdered, with the gruesome evidence found at the motel and the discovery of Sam's body. The police moved quickly. They arrested 5 people on February 9th, all of whom were suspected of playing a part in Sam's death. Their ages ranged from 19 to 38. Each suspect was charged with second-degree murder with depraved indifference. This charge means that the killers showed a total disregard for human life, acting in a way that was so reckless and cruel that it rose to the level of murder. About a week later, on February 20th, 2025, 2 more suspects were arrested and charged with the same crime. This brought the total number of accused individuals to 7. Police shared some details about these suspects' backgrounds. One was a man named Patrick Goodwin, who had a prior conviction for child sexual abuse. He had served time in prison and was released in 2023. Another was Kyle Sage, who had a history of grand larceny and distributing pornography to a minor. A third, named Precious Arzuaga, had been convicted of misdemeanor trespass and animal cruelty in the past. These backgrounds showed that some of the suspects had already broken the law before. Now, they were believed to have come together in an evil act that led to Sam's death. Investigators say the group worked in different ways to torture Sam, possibly passing in between them or taking turns assaulting him. The thought of multiple people hurting one young man for weeks is chilling, and many people wondered how this could happen without anyone noticing. Because Sam was transgender, many asked whether this was a hate crime. Did Sam's killers hurt him because of his gender identity? This is important because hate crimes can carry extra penalties and can show a deeper motive of bias or hatred. The Ontario County District Attorney said they did not believe there was enough evidence to prove that Sam's being transgender was the main motive. The DA noted that at least one of the suspects also identified within the LGBTQ+ community and had lived with Sam. Still, advocacy groups like GLAAD and the New Pride Agenda said that they believe bias could play a role, even if the suspects themselves identified as LGBTQ+. In some cases, hate and violence can come from people within the same community. Disagreements or self-hatred can turn into brutal acts. The DA, however, has to follow strict legal rules for proving hate crimes. They said the cruelty seemed to be part of a pattern of control and extreme violence, rather than a direct attack on Sam's identity alone. News of Sam's death spread quickly through Minnesota and New York. For the people in Red Wing, where Sam grew up, it felt unreal to imagine a hometown friend or neighbor meeting such a terrible fate. In Red Wing, folks knew Sam as a friendly face, a person who once walked along the riverside and made jokes with classmates. They could not believe that he died in a faraway place, in such a cruel manner. In Canandaigua, where the missing persons report was filed, and in Hopewell, where the motel was located, people were deeply shaken. They held vigils and gatherings in libraries, community centers, and even church basements to talk about what happened and to share their sorrow. Some lit candles and left flowers, while others spoke about the importance of protecting vulnerable individuals, especially people who are transgender, homeless, or otherwise at risk. Even local politicians responded. The governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, called the crime deeply disturbing. He promised that Minnesota would do everything it could to stand with the LGBTQ community and to support Sam's family. The governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, also said the state would assist in any way possible. including counseling for those who needed it and help with the investigation. Their words showed the weight of what had happened. Among the many voices that rose in the wake of Sam's death, the most heartbreaking came from Sam's mother, Linda Nordquist. She spoke to local news stations, describing her son in simple, loving words. She said, "He would give you the shirt off his back." This phrase means Sam was generous, always ready to help. Linda described how she felt the police failed to act on her many calls asking for wellness checks. She believed that if law enforcement had arrived sooner, Sam might still be alive. She also expressed anger toward the suspects. She called them evil and said they deserved to rot for what they did to her son. When a parent loses a child in such a violent manner, the sense of betrayal, pain, and fury is overwhelming. Linda's words reflect the heartbreak and disbelief that many parents feel when the system does not protect their loved ones. Right after Sam's body was found and identified, several vigils took place. In Red Wing, former classmates, teachers, and neighbors gathered at a local park or outside the high school to light candles in Sam's honor. They shared stories of how Sam had touched their lives. One person remembered how Sam stayed behind in the cafeteria to help clean up trays, simply because he wanted to assist the overworked staff. Another recalled Sam patiently explaining a science project to a struggling classmate. In Canandaigua, there was a vigil at a public library. People who never met Sam attended because they felt drawn to his story. Some had tears in their eyes as local community leaders read short speeches. They talked about the importance of kindness and the dangers of ignoring someone who is desperate for help. They prayed or took a moment of silence for Sam's family, hoping that they could find some measure of peace or comfort in the midst of their sorrow. Minnesota's House of Representatives POSI Caucus, People of Color and Indigenous Caucus, and their Queer Caucus released a statement of solidarity. They said they stood with Sam's family and the entire transgender community during this painful time. They also called for better laws to protect vulnerable individuals and for better training for law enforcement. They wanted to make sure that a tragedy like this would not happen again. Many people felt anger when they heard the details of Sam's story. They could not understand how a group of adults, some of them possibly also identifying as LGBTQ, could turn on a young man and treat him so cruelly. This anger was directed not only at the suspects, but also at the system that seemed to fail Sam. If Sam truly asked for an escape plan in December, why was he not helped? If his mother asked for wellness checks many times, why did the police not act sooner? Local authorities tried to explain their position, saying they had limited resources or that Sam was an adult who could make his own choices about where to live. But critics pointed out that Sam was clearly in danger. He had signaled distress, and his family's pleas were urgent. People demanded that cities and counties develop faster ways to respond to calls for help, especially when it involves someone who may be isolated or at risk of violence. When newspapers and TV stations shared the criminal histories of some suspects, the community's shock grew. Patrick Goodwin, age 30, had been convicted of child sexual abuse in 2015. He was released from prison in 2023. People wondered if he should have been more closely monitored. Another suspect, Kyle Sage, age 33, had served time for grand larceny and distributing pornographic material to a minor. He finished his prison sentence in May 2024. Then there was Precious Arzuga, age 38, who had convictions for trespassing, larceny, and an animal cruelty charge in 2016 involving her dog. Some felt these records should have served as red flags that these individuals could be dangerous. They asked whether better oversight, parole supervision, or community alerts might have prevented Sam's tragedy. By the time of their arrests, these suspects were living or traveling around Ontario County, near or with Sam. Their group also included younger individuals in their early 20s, which made people wonder how they all ended up in the same network. The investigation suggested that Sam may have become trapped in a social circle that was filled with violence and intimidation. Once inside, he found it nearly impossible to escape. Police reports described extremely disturbing acts. While I will not go into all the details, it is enough to say that Sam was beaten repeatedly with objects like sticks, belts, and dog toys. He was also sexually assaulted with things like a broomstick and a table leg. The abuse happened over many weeks, which means Sam was likely in constant pain, with no one to protect him or call for help on his behalf. Some neighbors at Patty's Lodge Motel claimed they heard noises but did not know what was going on. Others said they saw Sam looking bruised and weak, yet no one stepped forward in time to save him. Whether this was due to fear of the suspects, confusion about the situation, or not wanting to get involved, the result was the same. Sam was left alone to suffer. Experts in criminal behavior say that group torture is unusual, but does happen when people with violent tendencies come together under the control of one or two strong leaders. Others might join in out of fear, peer pressure, or their own cruelty. It is a tragic reminder that humans can sometimes show great evil when empathy is lost. After authorities found Sam's remains in Yates County, they sent the body to the Monroe County Medical Examiner's office. The medical examiner performed an autopsy, which confirmed that Sam died from sharp injuries and other trauma that clearly pointed to homicide. Because he had been missing for so long, and because of how his body was hidden, it was not easy to determine every exact moment of his final hours. Still, the autopsy showed that Sam had endured severe damage to many parts of his body. The discovery of Sam's remains was a turning point in the investigation. It gave the police physical evidence to link the suspects to a murder scene. They also found blood and other signs of violence at the motel room in Hopewell. By matching the evidence from a motel to what was found in the field, the police built a strong case against those arrested. Although the district attorney did not classify this as a hate crime, the seriousness of second-degree murder with depraved indifference still carries a very heavy penalty. If found guilty, the suspect could face long prison sentences, possibly even life behind bars without parole, depending on state laws and the specifics of the case. As with any major crime, the case did not end with the arrests. The suspects would need to go through court hearings, possibly including a grand jury process, pretrial motions, and then a trial. Each suspect would have their own lawyer and their own defense. Some might argue that they were forced by others or did not understand what was happening. Others might claim they were not present for all the torture or that they never intended to kill Sam. However, the charge of depraved indifference means that prosecutors believe these individuals acted with an extreme lack of care for human life. It is one of the most serious murder charges next to first-degree murder. The district attorney in Ontario County said the evidence was strong because it showed a pattern of continuous abuse. They had witness statements, physical clues, and likely forensic evidence from Sam's body and the motel. It may take a long time, sometimes even a year or more, to see a final verdict in a case like this. In the meantime, Sam's family must continue to live with the pain of losing him. They have to wait for justice in a system that can move slowly. But with the arrests and the collected evidence, it seems that the authorities are determined to hold each person involved accountable. In both Minnesota and New York, various groups have held events to remember Sam and to push for changes in laws and policies. Rochester LGBTQ+ Together, an organization near the area where Sam's body was found, spoke out against the violence and urged the public to pay attention to the plight of transgender individuals who might face danger. They said they were angered and disgusted to learn about the torture Sam suffered. They also stressed that crimes like these sometimes go unreported because victims are afraid no one will believe them or help them. A group known as the New Pride Agenda, which supports LGBTQ+ rights in New York, wrote that Sam's death was not an isolated event, but part of a culture where hate can grow. They recognized that many people assume hate crimes only come from strangers outside the community, but that is not always the case. Violence can come from people within a shared social circle too. They urged everyone to keep an open mind and to watch for signs of abuse, no matter who the abuser might be. The New York City Anti-Violence Project also commented. They said it is not always up to the police or the courts to decide if something is a hate crime, because the legal definition is narrow. In real life, prejudice can factor into how a person chooses a victim or how they treat them, even if it does not meet the strict rules required by hate crime laws. These groups pointed out that LGBTQ plus people, especially transgender individuals, are at greater risk of violence and often do not receive the protection they need. Some have asked how Sam will be remembered beyond the details of this horrible crime. A few organizers in Minnesota talked about including him in an exhibit about the state's LGBTQ history. This exhibit could feature pictures, stories, and personal items that celebrate who Sam was: his smile, his helpful nature, his loving spirit, rather than just how he died. Family and friends believe that Sam deserves to be remembered as a caring person, someone who put others first, and not just as another victim in a tragic news story. At public memorials, Sam's name is often spoken alongside words like hope, change, and healing. Even though his death was brutal, some community leaders say it has led to important conversations. They hope local police departments will take missing persons reports more seriously and that social services will respond faster when someone like Sam asks for help. They also want to see more shelters or safe places for LGBTQ plus individuals who feel trapped in abusive situations. This question weighs heavily on many minds. When we look at the timeline, Sam leaving in September 2024, sending worried messages, needing an escape plan in December, stopping all contact in January 2025, and then being found dead in February. It seems there were many chances to intervene. His family says they begged for help, but they were told Sam was an adult, or that there was not enough reason to believe he was in danger. Better communication between states could have helped. For example, Minnesota police might have worked closely with New York police once the family reported him missing. The Social Services Office in Ontario County might have sounded a bigger alarm when Sam came in asking about an escape. Even neighbors at the motel might have stepped up if they understood the severity of what they heard or saw. Unfortunately, none of that happened in time. Violence against transgender people remains a major concern in many parts of the world. People who do not fit into expected gender norms can face rejection, bullying, and sometimes physical attacks. In Sam's case, the suspects also seem to come from troubled backgrounds. Some wonder if they had their own histories of abuse or problems that led them to commit these crimes. Still, nothing excuses what they did. The group approach to Sam's torture stands out for its cruelty. Sometimes, the people who commit such crimes do so because they enjoy control, or they find twisted pleasure in harming someone they see as weaker. Others may go along with it because they fear being harmed themselves. Group violence often includes a leader who sets the tone, while the rest follow. This does not erase their guilt, but it helps explain how they might push each other to do something that, on their own, they might not do. Sam's family tried their best to raise alarms. They called the police, they reached out to others for help, and they never stopped looking for him. When Sam did not come home in early October as planned, they worried, but they knew Sam was an adult and might choose to extend his trip. When his messages turned strange, they grew more concerned, but they still hoped it was a passing issue. By January, however, they were frantic. They suspect that during this time, Sam was already being abused, but maybe not yet at the level it reached in late January and early February. It is possible Sam was isolated from his phone or from any outside contact. Often, abusers try to cut off their victim from friends and family. That way, the victim cannot ask for help or let people know how bad things are. By the time Sam's mother demanded multiple wellness checks, it may have been too late. Some also note that Sam's mother and siblings live far away in Minnesota, so they could not just drive over to check on him themselves. A friend from Sam's hometown also felt powerless. They saw his social media go silent. They had no address or phone number to reach him. Nobody seemed to know the exact location he was staying at in New York until the final days before the police arrived. The last big step in the case, as of early 2025, was the arrest of the 7 suspects. They were locked up in jail, waiting for the legal process to unfold. For the family, it offered some relief to know that the people responsible were no longer free to hurt others. Yet could not erase their grief. They still had to plan Sam's funeral. They had to face the reality that they would never see him again, never share a meal, never celebrate a holiday with him. Some people who followed the case said that even if justice is served, there is no punishment that can match the horror Sam went through. Others hope that a long sentence will at least keep the suspect from hurting anyone else. The conversation about hate crimes continues, as do discussions about how to better help those who are in abusive relationships or captive in dangerous places. Above all, people who truly knew Sam want the world to remember him for his warmth and generosity. They do not want his memory to be overshadowed by the cruel acts of others. Sam had dreams, too. He wanted to continue working with people who had disabilities, or maybe go back to school one day. He had hopes for the future, perhaps to find love that was safe and true. He believed in giving back to the world, and that is why he worked in a group home. Some friends said Sam was also good at creative things, like drawing or writing poems. Though not many of these creations were shared publicly, they reflect a side of Sam that people do not always see in the news. He was more than a victim. He had a story of love and friendship that was cut short by violence. Community groups in Minnesota and New York have pledged to keep Sam's name alive. They plan to host talks in schools about staying safe online and recognizing warning signs of abuse. They also want to support transgender youth, who often lack resources or face rejection from family and peers. If there is one lesson from Sam's case, it is that we cannot assume everything is fine just because someone is an adult or living far away. Sometimes, people need us to step in, even when they do not know how to ask. Lawmakers have also been urged to consider changes. One idea is to make it easier for families to request welfare checks in other states and to have those requests treated with urgency. Another is to make sure social workers and police officers have better training on how to spot signs of domestic violence or captivity, especially among marginalized individuals. If Sam's pleas for an escape plan had been taken more seriously, he might still be here today. Sam's story is both heartbreaking and terrifying. It begins with a young man full of kindness and hope, planning a trip to meet someone he knew online. It ends with a tragic discovery in a field, police investigations revealing months of torture, and the arrests of multiple suspects. Through it all, Sam's family fought to find him and to make sense of what happened. Their pain and anger reflect the feelings of many who hear this story. Yet, in the midst of this darkness, there is a strong message about the need for compassion and vigilance. We never truly know what someone is going through behind closed doors. If someone seems off or shares that they feel unsafe, we should not ignore it. We should keep asking questions, keep pushing for help, and not let official red tape stop us from saving a life. Sam Nordquist was a person with dreams, talents, and a big heart. He deserved a full and happy life. The cruelty he endured shows how far some people can fall into violence and how crucial it is to protect those in danger. By telling his story, we honor his memory and remind ourselves that we all have a role to play in preventing such tragedies. May we learn from this and strive to build communities where nobody's pleas are ignored and where every person is treated with the respect and dignity they deserve.